How you doing, Ash?
Hi there, Richard.
We'll just wait for a few folks to join. Oh, it looks like people are coming in. All right, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Richard. I'm head of product here at BugHerd, and today I'm joined by Ash Shaw at Lightspeed. Hi, Ash.
Hi.
Um,
Hi,
so
Richard.
yeah, today we're going to have a great discussion about creating a seamless handoff in your website projects. Ash is a bit of an expert at this, um, so it'd be great to have this conversation, mate. Before we get started, a little housekeeping. We'll be doing a Q&A at the end of the session, but feel free to pop any questions into the chat or the Q&A section, and we'll pick up on those. You can drop them in there at any time. Yeah, so let's get into it. To begin with, though, Ash, it'd be great if you introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ash Shaw, founder of Lightspeed, a WordPress and WooCommerce agency that's been building custom websites since 2003. We specialize in helping businesses, especially travel, tourism, and publishing, create scalable, content-driven websites that deliver real results. I'm currently working remotely from Thailand, living the dream.
Lucky. I'm jealous, very jealous. Although not quite jealous of the time there, I'm sure. But anyway.
Yeah.
Um, so to get started, I think like that was a good little intro to yourself, but it'd be good to understand a bit about the sort of typical Lightspeed projects that you work on, and what you do in a bit more detail.
So, being a WordPress and WooCommerce agency, we focus on WordPress development, and our process is content first design and repeatable systems. So, we start with a Figma design system, which then, once we've collected that content, we can populate the design system and create a prototype. WordPress block themes are how we build the sites. It's a little bit different to your typical Elementor WordPress workflow. And we aim for consistent handoffs through these steps. And we use BugHerd for our staging site feedback. And this makes our job a lot easier. Work ranges from e-commerce to news publishing, all
All
running
right.
through the same the same structured workflow. The outcome of fewer cycles and faster sign-off.
There we go. Sorry, I'll lose my lights every now and then because here in Australia it's quite early. So that's fantastic, mate. Look, to get into sort of the topic that we're here to discuss, from your experience, what makes that design to development handoff, such a challenging stage in the projects that you've worked on?
Well, we've refined our process over the years to avoid making or having a challenging handoff. And we ensure that specs are really clear. So by having a clear spec, you basically ask the right questions, get the right answers, then gather the right content, which will, as I said earlier, inform content first design. Designers then, when they pass off files to developers, in a typical environment, I find that it lacks the kind of information that the developers need to translate it properly. So, by including the key information in the design system and the Figma prototype, the developers understand states, responsive behaviors, edge cases, interactions, and get developers when they use Figma dev mode aren't left guessing, which leads to, guessing will just mean mistakes. Disorganized files and poor version control cause big problems, so we're quite particular about how we use GitHub. Without a clear structure, naming conventions, or properly tracked versions, developers waste a lot of time finding the latest approved designs, or components in Figma. And if it's a new developer on a new project and they have to get up to speed on the code base, same kind of thing. Fragmented communication and tools make things difficult. So how we've addressed that is we have a very specific workflow that the team are quite familiar with. And we do use different systems at different points, but we always use the same systems. So it starts in, for example, Google Docs when we send out the questionnaire, then move to content collection. We store things in Google Drive, Figma comments for design and prototype feedback, and then BugHerd for staging feedback and BugHerd for live feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. And are your team fully remote? Or you're obviously remote from Thailand, but what about the rest of the team?
Well, more than, well, it was nearly 15 years ago now. I was reading some interesting material that and following the people behind WordPress Automatic, who are a fully remote company, and I got interested in the idea. I kind of banned people from coming to the office. We still do meet up once or twice a year, but it's inconvenient for my team to come in because they have families and kids and school runs. So we've got a very good workflow for remote, and that's why we're fully remote.
Mm.
And everyone is accountable, and they enjoy the freedom in their lifestyle.
Yeah, excellent. And one random question, it's not in what we discussed, but how many projects would you tend to do on a sort of monthly basis?
So we have two types of clients or projects happening. We'll have retainer clients who may come up with like a project that they need done or support, for example. So those are two ad hoc types of projects. Otherwise, we land projects mostly in recently it's been in the tourism side of things because of our tour operator projects. And those are big projects. So they would go on for up to 3 months. And because often there's a lag between phases, not because of us, but because of content, client feedback, and that sort of thing, we do work on, say, 2 to 3 big projects at a time. We're a team of 7 right now, and we are currently hiring 2 new roles.
Yeah, excellent. I think it's a really, really common size of sort of business for the like BugHerd. Our general users are sort of in that sort of same space. So I think this chat will be really valuable to a lot of people.
I've had a bigger team, but personally, I prefer the size. I've had up to 15 people in the team, and yeah, I do what I do because I love it. And when it starts becoming too much admin, it becomes less enjoyable, and I have less passion for it. So yeah.
Yeah, understandable. All right. So how do you onboard clients for ensuring some useful feedback that you're going to get out of that?
The last time I was working remotely in Thailand, I was doing some research on how I can improve that process. So I found one of the people in the WordPress community who he has a getting started video and page on his website. Now I haven't created the video, but I have got a very clear getting started document that is client friendly, not internal for internal usage. It
Mm,
explains that yes, you can pay us the 50% deposit, but we're not going to start until we have your content. So
right.
we will move from the getting started into the website questionnaires and then straight into generating a content checklist.
Do your clients usually already have a website that they're sort of refreshing, or is it?
Mostly that's true. Sometimes, like the questionnaire I'll be showing shortly, it's a new website where the person hasn't got a presence online, so you need to think about it from scratch. I find those the most exciting projects because I I have to do strategy from scratch. And yeah, they don't come around too often though.
How do your clients find, because I'd imagine the asking them for all the content up front before anything happens is quite a like overwhelming thing for a lot of non-technical folks.
Well, we live in a wonderful age now. The days of waiting 6 months for the client to give you all of the content on that checklist are gone.
Hmm.
So I would like to share my screen and
Sure, that'd be great.
um,
That was going to be my next question. Can we see that beautiful checklist?
yeah, yes, there we go. And so, this is my friend in Thailand, and he's my host. And he has an interior design business, and he has no content, not even really images. So I thought, oh, well, let me apply myself for this webinar and also for his benefit. And I created a questionnaire. It asks a few questions about brand identity. So I understand a little bit about who he is, seeing it's a one-man band in this instance. It's more about him and his personality for the business. Um, then what is his story? And what are his services? Then what are his ideal clients? And then we move into brand personality and tone. And next, seeing it's a brand new business in this instance, I needed to come up with some ideas for a name for the business. And we've ended up going for DNY for Danny, DNY Creative Dot Solutions. And then we move into the website content and functionality, getting an idea of the purpose of the site and how does he want to attract business, um, structure and pages. These are all related to content. And then design preferences, which are key, especially sites you like, but almost more so sites you don't like.
Hmm.
Technical side, he didn't understand so much, so I helped him there. Same with the rest of it. I did this interview last night, and the initial chat that I had to him, very briefly, I took all of those notes and I prompted this questionnaire
Hmm.
and came up with this outline, and it was spot on. So if you give really specific information, it works well. And then this was the content checklist that I created, which it's not just a checklist. It explains creating the Drive folder, Google Drive folder, what the structure is, what to upload, naming conventions for the files, and why that matters. People don't understand how important naming conventions are. Then some best practices, keeping it simple, not too technical.
Mm.
And
Do you ever get
um,
any pushback from the clients? Like I'm just thinking back to my past as an agency PM, and the clients vary, and their opinions on why they're hiring you sort of varies. I could imagine a lot saying, "Hey, this is what I'm hiring you for. I don't write website content. I don't really know all this. You tell me."
well, actually, he said that because he doesn't really know how to generate it, and he particularly or he specifically said it's not his strength. And the answers that I collected last night are actually sufficient for me to move to the next step, which is content collection. So
Yeah.
I'll be able to generate this. I would prefer if my clients give me at least samples, but if they have an existing website, it makes it so much easier. In that instance, I would do a content audit, which would yield key information about valuable content on the site, maybe content that's less of a lower quality. And then I would start working out the content strategy. And then once those aspects are done, I'd move into the content generation if
Yeah,
they
great.
need it. Some people, they don't want that service, so they'll do it themselves.
Yeah. Um, so just a note for there's a few things coming through in the Q&A. We definitely will be sharing some links to some content after this, so stay tuned for that. You talked about your sort of tool stack there, and obviously Figma was a sort of starting point in a lot of that. Oh, sorry, Google Docs was a starting point, but Figma was really like the next stage after that. Do you want to talk a little bit to how you use Figma? And in particular, I know you've talked about with us how you use a table of contents and how you structure your Figma to really get the most out of it.
So I've been working with Figma for a couple of years, about 2.5 years now, and it's been a wonderful journey. They're an inspiring company, and I absolutely love their product. So I was doing a talk in Europe for on this topic. And I did a whole bunch of research. Well, actually, it was bridging the gap between designers and developers. And when I was doing my research for the talk, I found on their best practices part of the website some recommendations on making prototypes more effective and adding a table of content that has a clear explanation of how to use the prototype. So also, what is it?
Mhm.
Uh, and what to give feedback on. So here it explains that there is a table of contents below. You can use the links to navigate the page designs because it's not obvious sometimes to users that this is not a website. It's
Mm.
still part of the design system, and it's kind of a byproduct of the design system. And often I get the question, like, how do I navigate? They don't realize that you can click on the interface and see what is clickable by the highlights.
Mm.
So you can navigate, and then this little button in it will let you go back. And then you can leave comments. So it explains there, and it explains what to give feedback on. That is crucial. You don't
Mm.
necessarily want to know about, I couldn't click into the comments section and leave a comment. That's not part of it. And we did get those questions right up until we started using this table of contents instead of instructions. So here, this was quite a comprehensive one. We needed to figure out certain layouts for the client, so we gave them different options. Mainly, it was about redesigning their single tour page. So I do this. There's the return button. If you click on different parts of the prototype, you can see it goes to different sections. And this is how the website will work.
Yeah.
So this is pretty accurate. If I go back and I now navigate down, we have a single tour because for this client's target audience, many of the customers are older and they like to use tablets. So
Mm.
tablet is usually we would only really give them desktop and mobile, but in this instance, it was quite important.
Yeah.
And
That's
it's a
cool.
very different user experience. Then the next one is mobile. And if I actually, let me show you this. If I want to leave feedback, I can do that and I can mention one of my teammates or the client could. And all of this feedback sits over here
Mm.
and allows us to process it bit by bit, which is very important.
Absolutely. So in terms of I mean that's great. I think definitely clients we know are not really too accustomed to Figma, and if you're not a Figma user, it can be very confusing. I mean, we use Figma internally, and I still constantly am asking our product designer, "Hey, which which design are we looking at? What version is this?" Um, but so I'm sure that that really helps that process. In terms of like the more general process, so the like the checkpoints between design, dev, and sort of client review. Can you talk a little bit to how that flow works for you guys at Lightspeed?
Yeah. So when we get to that, the website questionnaire will yield key information about the brand, which will help us do the research we want to do on competitors and understand colors and tone and voice and that sort of thing. Tone and voice does definitely have impact on the designs, even though it would impact largely the content. What you want to convey with the design is affected. So we will then use that information to plan out the design system specifically around the templates, and we structure our Figma file for WordPress specifically. So in there, we'll have pages in Figma for templates, patterns, template parts, blocks. And these are all things that relate directly to WordPress block theme development aspects. So that checklist up front, understanding what it is we need component-wise within Figma is important. Then once we have all of those components, making the prototype is actually pretty easy.
Mm.
So then with the prototype signed off, like after we've gone through that client feedback stage and they've approved that, we now have a blueprint to move to the staging site, and
Mm.
that is locked in. So if there are changes, those are most definitely scope creep.
Yep. Yeah, right.
And
Um,
then the staging moves. So we'll do the development, we'll build, and then we'll add BugHerd and use it initially for our own feedback internally.
mhm.
The developers even use it for their own notes to, I need to do this and do that. And then we create, yeah, I didn't mention with the prototype, when we send it to the client, we actually have a cover letter, that like a template that we start with, and then we customize specifically to their needs. Because most of that information is on the table of contents on what we want feedback on, we try to keep that to a minimum. With
Yep.
BugHerd, we put most of that type of information into the cover email, and then put the invite link, which drives them to the staging site and then activates the BugHerd feedback bar. They'll go through the feedback stage. We'll close off all the feedback. When we've closed everything off, we get their buy-in for live deployment. So at each point, we need approval before we move to the next step. If we have that in writing, everyone is on the same page. Then once we have that sign off, we plan out the deployment, and we will push to the live environment, and then we'll activate BugHerd on live for a short space just for client review, potentially feedback. Maybe they have some questions. And once everything is approved, we disable BugHerd on live, and the site is live. We do, however, need to ensure during that phase that we tick all the boxes on our post-launch checklist. We have a pre-launch checklist and a post-launch checklist, meaning everything is structured
Mhm.
and repeatable.
Right.
Jump again.
I don't even know where the sensor is, so I'm just going to go with it.
Okay.
But I think you sort of answered my question, my next question a little bit there, but I'll say it anyway. So in terms of that, the client QA aspect of it, so how do you keep the client's feedback in staging like clear and actionable? Because we all know a client loves to throw in opinions or a little bit of scope creep here and there? How do you keep them on track?
So being a small BugHerd agency, I mean, sorry, a small agency, we had the smaller BugHerd account, and thanks to you guys for upgrading us, because now we've been able to invite our clients, add them to access the Kanban board, and now they can see the feedback, which it's already proved to be useful this week with our clients. So all of that feedback that comes in from the client is then visible to them. We'll leave comments as we process the feedback. And yeah, as if any, well, we often actually find that if clients don't understand things about the site, they ask questions. So bit by bit, they start to understand the process. If they're new to it, it can be quite foreign. So even the cover email doesn't necessarily help them. Some people are a little bit technology challenged, and you need to be patient with people like that and just try to help them understand. I had one of those this morning, in actual fact, and he's now onboarded and he's providing feedback. So we got past that.
Awesome. Great.
Clear communication.
Yeah, that's everything, isn't it? Um, so, you've talked about some great sort of structures that you've put in place here. Is there any example you could give of to where having these structures in place has really like clearly demonstrably saved you time on a project?
Okay, so in South Africa, there's a company, Media24, who are owned by Naspers. They're a massive global company, and they have a news site, News24, and News24 had 21 local newspapers. They kicked them out, and then they found a buyer. Interesting. And because we've worked for them since the mid 2000s, they recommended Lightspeed for the development, and novanews.coza, and then the 21 local newspapers that was the project. So 22 websites. I started interviewing a team of 50 plus people with 4 different departments scattered all over South Africa. And I spent actually about 4 months interviewing and gathering information. This was way more for the website questionnaire and content collection, but it really made the biggest difference to do the questionnaire in such depth. And I actually generated all of the website's content, not the articles, obviously, but the website content. Then, so the project started initially discussions in October, started interviews in November. December's kind of holiday time. January, we moved into really honing in on what it is we needed to generate content for. February, I generated the content, and then I had 1 month to build 22 websites. That included, 6 weeks included the prototypes. So we created 2 prototypes. One was for the main news site, and then the other one was for the local newspaper sites. And we got complete sign-off. Because there were 50 cooks involved, there was a lot of discussion, and it could have really gone badly. But with that sign-off and a clear agreement, we moved into development, and we got all 22 sites live by the end of March. And
Oh, wow.
since then, we have consistently gone through a process of prototype, staging, launch, prototype, staging, launch. The client is now quite used to it. One of the clients actually contacted me the other day. She wasn't CC'd on everything, and she didn't realize that things were happening. So When my team had a meeting with her, she realized, oh, actually, we've been doing prototypes, and her team were handling things, and everything was running very smoothly. And we actually just got sign off this week to push live on another round of work.
Yeah, great.
And even on top of that, there was a mini project it's got to go live by the 1st of September. 1st of September. And we're going to deliver.
Yeah,
Without
nice.
this process, we would not have made it. Guaranteed.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely sounds like it's great at organizing that initial chaos of everybody's opinions of what they want, right? Um,
Yeah.
so like you've talked there about having like a really nice sign-off process where it's just gone, yes, excellent, that's exactly what we wanted. Um, and obviously it all comes down to if you've got the brief right, if you've understood the problem right, if you've communicated well with the client, all the things along the way lead to that. But how like how do you make sure, even with all that process, that that final sign off goes smoothly? Because we always know there's always, oh, can we? Or what about this? That sort of thing.
Well, sometimes you need to put your foot down on the we also need this. It depends on timelines. So the Safari partners that I demoed earlier with the prototype, when we did that version of the site, the first version of it, actually, we've been building that site for like more than 10 years, but the more recent version in 2022, we worked on for a year because the clients kept going, what about this? What about this? And I said to him, we need to go to market. He wanted extra things. So we listened. He eventually, after we did get that version of the site live, he said, I think you were right about getting to market sooner and we should have rolled out more iteratively. So you need to make a decision whether you put your foot down and say no to new items, or maybe it is actually crucial to the business.
Mhm.
It entirely depends on your deadline and pressure. So once that site goes live, though, or when it goes live, you need a very clear definition of how to deploy. So we have a system administrator. We call him Batman. He helps us with deployments. However, if he's unavailable, he has documented the process of deployments really well. So I've now plugged that documentation into GitHub Copilot Spaces, and I've created a space specifically on our hosting environment. So newer developers now can onboard and ask the Copilot space for advice on certain aspects of hosting, setting up staging, or deploying to live. So that makes that easier. But after launch, you can't forget to link up Google Analytics or whatever other tracking service.
Yeah.
And we think it's important to also link up Google Search Console, which then leads to the site being indexed, and testing performance with Google PageSpeed. That also uncovers accessibility issues, which should be done on staging to an extent, but then again on live, because there's certain things that are in place on live that we don't have on dev,
Mm.
like caching and well, a variety of things.
Yeah.
So it's important to have those steps. And then security is important. So yeah, we sometimes we miss things in the staging environment, and it happens. And if
Mm.
the client finds it, as I said, we'll have BugHerd enabled on their live site for a period, and they can log the feedback. We'll catch those stragglers, and then once we're all happy, we send a formal sign-off request, get that in writing, and once they approve, we submit the final 50% invoice.
Yeah. So just to finish off the list of questions I've got here before we move on to Q&A, we've got some great questions there. But top 3 tips to improve like today for folks' workflows?
Well, the table of contents in Figma prototypes has been a game changer for us. We only implemented that from the beginning of June this year, and the difference in client happiness and feedback has been phenomenal. So I'd highly recommend that. Create a component out of it so that it's reusable, and you just need to fill in client-specific details then.
Hmm.
Standardize your tools by phase. Whatever you use, maybe use Microsoft OneDrive or whatever, a Dropbox, have a standardized way of handling each step. We love Figma, we love BugHerd, we love Slack. That's obviously for internal communication. Um, and GitHub Pilot, Copilot, and yeah, those tools are critical, and a standardized way of using it. If you can, even document best practices for your team. As I mentioned earlier, Copilot Spaces, it's a new thing for my team to use that. And I've started plugging in all of our internal handbooks to like a dedicated internal space. And that has been pretty impressive. I've now
Mm.
got to onboard 2 new teammates. I don't need to give them a long Google document. I just give them the Copilot space.
Yeah.
We
I
need
feel
to,
like we could do a whole nother webinar on AI use
we could
cases
indeed. We
for this.
could.
Um,
Defining what good feedback is, that needs to change. What is that, and what does it need to change to? Um,
mm,
so with the Figma side, the table of contents explains exactly what it is we want feedback in. The cover email before inviting people to the staging site tells them exactly what it is we want. Um, Good feedback is subjective. Sometimes it takes a little coaching. But using those 2 tools, Figma is contextual on the prototype or the design file. BugHerd gives you screenshots or videos. So
mm,
that's usually good enough. And the metadata with it is super helpful. Then
yeah.
due dates are essential for each item. Unless I mean, you can give a client a due date for various things. If they can't deliver, we can't really put pressure on them. But if you give a due date for your work, you should definitely deliver within that time frame.
100%. We've actually just added a feature in the last couple of weeks around having sort of scheduled periods where you can accept feedback into a project, and then after which point it
Oh,
sort of
wow.
delays. So that's a new one, but it's sort of along those lines, trying to keep everyone to the deadline.
I'll check that
Uh,
out for sure. Thanks.
yeah. So, all right, let's have a look at some of the questions we've got here.
Yeah, shoot.
Um, we got some good ones from Ayema. For maintenance or support retainer clients, how long are these contracts? And do they just stay hibernated until a task comes up, or is there a minimum retainer? Do you do retainers?
We do. So we have 2 types of retainers. Some clients don't want the overhead of a monthly retainer because it's a risk for them.
Yeah.
So we offer them the option of a prepaid retainer. So that doesn't expire. Maybe they buy 3 hours, maybe they buy 5, 10, 20. It's up to them. Or like our news client, for example, they have 20 hours a month, and that renews every month. My team use Harvest app for logging their time. And whenever we work on anything, we've integrated Harvest into GitHub, into Asana, which is for project management, and Zendesk, which we use for support. So we will log time by clicking a timer from one of those areas, which then links the log to that specific item.
Yeah.
And we provide monthly reporting. We carry over hours to an extent. If you have 10 hours, and you're not using them, we can't just keep carrying over 10 hours because we don't have the capacity to suddenly have to do 100 hours in 10 months
Yeah.
after 10 months of not using it. So we will advise clients to adjust that. With that, we have service level agreements where we endeavor to respond within 24 to maximum 48 hours. We don't necessarily have to resolve it. There are levels though. So we set urgent, important, normal, minor, a bit like BugHerd's priorities.
Mm.
And if it is urgent or critical, we generally need to resolve that within 48 to 72 hours. Sometimes even less, depends on the issue. If our sysadmin's on it, Batman, his response is done. When
Mm.
we send it to him, he's incredible.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just on an extension of that, for me, what percentage of your time do you think your team would be spending on retained work as opposed to new project work?
So we worked as I mentioned with tourism clients. Then COVID hit, and we had to our tourism clients couldn't pivot. But luckily, we were hired by one of the biggest hosting companies in South Africa. They used to be Hetzner South Africa, and they buy basically one person. So
Right.
that's quite a chunk. And it's great working with them because they work in a similar agile workflow. They use Figma, they provide us designs, prototypes, that sort of thing. We have stand-ups, we have agile. That is rare though. That we only have one client like that. So we really have to make sure we have resources available for them. Then our news client, for example, they have quite a lot of work. It's because it's a startup and they've only been going since March. They've been pummeling us with new projects consistently.
Mm.
So that's been very hard to manage, I must say. And then like balancing that with the smaller retainer clients and then the big projects and product development has been challenging this year. But
Mm.
nonetheless, we've managed to push out releases on our software. We have a major release coming up on our tour operator plugin, which will then filter into all of our projects and also retainer clients.
Is your tour operator plugin a paid plugin or free?
Because I've been in the open source world for 25 years, I believe firmly in open source. And we open sourced our software in 2014. And I'm proud to say that it's entirely open source. And it was actually sponsored last year, which enabled us to push out the 2.0 release this year.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah, great. All right, let me have a quick look at these. Do you have a project manager on your team to track all the work, or do you find that your team can get by without it?
Um, Yes and no. So I had a project manager after 13 years. He resigned. He gave us a good time frame. Didn't know what to do because I didn't want to have to project manage everything. And I hire people based on personality. And my swim coach was needing a change, so I hired him. He has moved into the role of support manager and project manager, which is something he never really did. He had no WordPress experience, which was actually perfect for me because I could train him on what I consider our best practices.
Hmm.
So the team are, however, well trained on how to manage tasks. They comment on tasks status every so often. We'll do a triage every now and then, which means we go in and we'll clean up. It would be lovely to have a dedicated project manager, but we're not really big enough. If the team was closer to 15, I would say that I'd need a dedicated project manager. But
Mm.
between my business partner and our support manager and myself, we managed to run pretty tight projects.
You can juggle it. Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Again,
Uh,
documentation and process is important there.
yeah, absolutely. There was a question from Andrew about, I think really in the early parts about your spec. Um, uh, is this within Figma or is it written in a Google Doc? And is this an internal doc or one you've agreed and signed off with the client? I feel like we maybe have touched on that earlier
Well,
when we
I'd
went
like to
live.
cover that because it is an important topic. So if it's a big project, we will not do a spec document without what we call a paid evaluation.
Hmm.
So that will, like the news site, for example, was massive. I had to go through that questionnaire process and the consent process. Once I had the consent, then that generated a very clear technical spec as well from the results from all of the interviews. But the prototype, I would say, is combined with the Google Doc that documents to the T technical requirements
Mm.
and user flow and that sort of thing, user personas. The combination of those two makes it very clear. Oh, nice sunrise.
Yeah, gorgeous sunrise out there.
Yeah.
Almost don't want to put the lights back on.
So yeah, that's like we have a big project that's kicking off shortly. It's the biggest prototype I've ever sold. I went through about 12 hours of paid evaluation to generate the technical description and content collection. Now the client has been working for 8 weeks nearly on content. And I think next week or the week after, they should be done with the content, which will now enable us to move to prototyping.
Mm. Yeah, great. Um, and do these get agreed with the client? And so, like, are they external? Like you would pass those to the client for sign off, or is it more?
Just like my team are remote, my clients are remote. I
Mm.
very rarely meet my clients, even if they're in Cape Town and I'm in Cape Town. Everyone's busy. I do try to, but yeah, we'll have that document shared between us. And they may not understand the technical side. In the next week's project, the guy did actually. It was
Mm.
wonderful. So he really understood what I was proposing. But that is rare. So nonetheless, I always have the document shared with the client. We will have internal discussions on the document because I play open cards. My team are well versed in knowing what to say and what not to say, and using professional language in comments.
Yeah, great. So good one here from Susanna, and I'm conscious we've maybe got about 10 minutes left.
Great.
Um, so Susanna says our issue in app handoff between Figma and developers is that Figma designs, padding, and fonts don't translate faithfully, requiring hundreds of BugHerd bugs and time waste. Any hacks to streamlining the interaction between designers and engineers? This is a time-old question.
Um, Figma dev mode is very important. So this is a wonderful question. Um, we learned recently that fonts in Figma, font weighting specifically, and then when you code it, often that doesn't align. So say it is Roboto 400, which may be it's not regular, it's one below. Maybe fine. If it was fine in the design, it may need to be extra fine in the prototype. I mean, in the dev side.
Build. Yeah.
You need to, depending on the font, test that, maybe up or down 100. So because we have our own design system that we use for every block theme project, we've actually open sourced this design system. And when I spoke at WordCamp about bridging the divide between designers and developers, at the end, I appealed to the community to get involved with this open source project so we could improve it.
Mm.
That makes all the sense. But if you're a small agency, I still think you should consider building over time a design system that applies to your repeatable projects.
Mm.
We have a design system for our tour operator projects, and then we have a general WordPress WooCommerce design system that even
Mm.
has prototypes built in. So it makes that process much easier. It aligns with the building blocks that we use within WordPress. We use core blocks, so paragraph, heading, whatever it is. Then we use Figma variables and Figma styles. Styles we only use for fonts. The variables, we will do everything else. So that weighting, for example, the line height, the letter spacing, all of those kind of values we'll do with variables. Now, I learned a new trick in the last 2 weeks in my research. There is a code syntax field where you can add the related CSS variable name to the Figma variable, which means that when you're generating the CSS using Figma dev mode, you can generate more accurate snippets,
Okay.
making it
Interesting.
easier for developers. And we're in the process of implementing Figma MCP server or dev mode MCP server, that's Model Context Protocol, and GitHub remote Model Context Protocol server. Now, your Figma design system speaks to your GitHub code base.
Mm.
So when you link the two and you're generating code using, for example, GitHub Copilot, a Copilot is aware of the design system, and it makes it easier for you to generate the code for whatever the component is. It works better for React and certain kind of JavaScript frameworks,
Yeah.
not as well for WordPress, although I have found a way to work to improve our system and get more accurate output. I hope
Yeah.
that answers the question.
Yeah, look, I'd add something to that as well. Not really thinking about it from a, hey, I'm a designer passing something to a developer, but thinking about it, how a developer receives it from a designer. There's things you can do as well that are more basic that are, you talk to a design system, be consistent in the spacings, the typesetting that you do in your designs. So the development team learn that over time, especially if you've got overseas resources that you're bringing in for ad hoc projects that aren't on your project. Also, set out that stuff in like a Claude Markdown file or your GitHub Copilot spaces that
100%.
that say, hey, this is the typesetting we tend to use. These are the sort of standard paddings we use. This is our design system connected via MCP. So a lot of that you can do like now with the AI, so that if they're using Claude Code or if they're using GitHub Copilot or Cursor or whatever, they don't even have to think about spacing because it gets taken care of for them. So it's sort of the other way around to think about it too, like how are we conforming into how developers are working, as opposed to saying, hey, developer, this is what you need to go and build.
So another topic on that, the designers shouldn't just design. They should collaborate with the developers to
Mm.
understand what it is those developers are building. And they should design for the code components that the developers have.
Yeah.
So if they're going to give some kind of design option that doesn't exist in the, call it a block in WordPress, then that makes it difficult to translate. So
Mm.
I've been collaborating with an agency in Norway on how they can improve their design system. And what I realized is their designers don't collaborate closely with the developers to understand how the WordPress block editor works, for example, which
Mm.
we discussed at length, and they realize the designers actually need to upskill on exactly how the devs work. They don't need to understand the technical, but they need to understand what it is they need.
Yeah, 100%. Let me just have one look here. I think we might have time for one more question. Uh, so there's a few questions about your design system. We'll put a link to that in the email
Yeah.
that we send out afterwards. Um, uh, your workflow, this is interesting. So your workflow is similar to my team's workflow. My question is, do you have experience in getting project management teams and client account reps aligned with this workflow? It has been a challenge for us. So I'm not sure how many folks are on that person's team. Um,
Sounds like a big team.
Sounds like a bigger team, yeah. Any thoughts?
So documentation again, and I would actually even say, even if they're not developers, consider creating a Copilot space
Hmm.
for documenting processes around that, so that the client reps could just ask. It doesn't even have to be a technical space. It can be about human readable topics.
Mm,
So what happens when I get a client asking about a scope creep item just before launch? How do we handle that? And
yeah.
over time, if different people contribute to the docs that get added to that space, you'll build up a resource of possible answers and ways to deal with that scenario.
Mm. I think in my experience as well, so I've worked in larger agencies like Ogilvy as well as smaller ones. Like anything, when you're trying to coordinate across different areas of the business, it's about bringing everyone together to create those milestone documents and
Yeah.
having them in place. So, for example, with Ogilvy, you'd always have a brief. You'd always have a folder structure set up in a certain way. You'd always have the project plan using a particular template. You'd always have, the financial tracking always using a particular spreadsheet, right? So it was it was all set out in particular steps, and everyone knew that process, but everyone had come together to build that process, right? It wasn't the the project manager saying, "Hey, this is our new process." It was like collaboratively driven.
So something else on the I just triggered about the design system and the developer handoff side is documentation within the design system.
Yep.
Um, so that may even help the client reps when they were looking at things before moving to the prototype. And they're like, what is this? And there's a little description above it to say what that component is and what its purpose, like how it interacts.
I remember my back in the day of my doing wireframes and IAs as a UXer. You'd always have like the wireframe, and then on the right-hand side be all the descriptions of the different interactions, like, hey, okay, this button goes to here, or this is going to be a carousel where you use it, and you're explaining it in language that the client would understand, not just the technical folks too. But I always
Always
find
aim.
with Figma, you sort of we've moved all the way to you actually creating the interaction uh,
Yeah.
in the prototype, that sometimes the definition of that is lost, and therefore it gets lost in translation a bit.
That's why having a base design system is useful. So
Mm.
it's what you use on every project. And I
Yeah.
do think that that would be beneficial to both the project managers and client reps. Yeah, and if the client reps, project managers, designers, and developers all align and everyone has clear documentation, it just makes it leaves for less room for error.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a better flow and a better client experience.
100%. I think that's a great
Sounds
place
like
to
you're
leave
very
it.
experienced, Richard. You've got some mad skills there.
It's just old. That's what it's called. So let's leave it at that. So yeah, look, thanks so much for your time, Ash. Thanks everybody for joining. I think this has been really insightful. Uh, Everybody who signed up, keep an eye on your inboxes. We'll send out a follow-up email. It'll have links to all this great stuff that we've talked about. We'll also send out a survey. If you can fill that out, we'd be much appreciative because we love to evolve these series and make sure that they're valuable, you're getting value from it. So the survey really helps. Um, Ash, thanks. The time zone has not been great for you in Thailand. We
All good.
appreciate that.
One last thing that I
Yeah,
just
go.
want to say is, in prep for this webinar, I wrote 6 blog posts on my company site, which you guys will be sending out, I realize. They take you from the getting started process to website questionnaire to content collection to design and prototype to staging and to launch.
Yeah,
So those will recap in simple words, client-friendly and agency-friendly topics.
yeah. And it's all great stuff. So thanks so much for putting in the effort for making this
My
a,
pleasure.
a really valuable one. I think everyone, I mean, there's some great comments there as well. So appreciate it. Um, have a great morning. I hope you go and get some sleep. Everyone else, have a great evening. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.